So Kirsten, we wish you well in New York. Go with our love. So today is Martin Luther King's birthday. It's the actual day, January 15th. He would be 83 years old today if he had lived. And you know, one of the ways that we keep our loved ones alive is by stopping and asking ourselves, what is it that we loved most about them, and what is it we would like to emulate? At a memorial service, I always ask that question, which is, what did you love the most about your husband, your wife, your child, your sibling, your friend? What is it that you love most about them? And how can you make that quality that you love a part of who you are? And in that way, our loved ones continue to live through us. And so in celebration of Martin Luther King's birthday, I raised the question, which is, how can we emulate Martin Luther King and some of the things that he stood for? Because he left us a rich legacy that goes on decades after his death. Now, a little bit about him. His father and his grandfather were both ministers, and you can kind of just see it. You know, he just has a natural inclination for preaching and speaking. He was a master. And at the age of 3, he had a friend, a white playmate, a little boy. And when he turned 6, the boy's father said that they couldn't play together anymore because of one being white and one being black. And he said, Martin Luther King said, "I will never forget what a great shock that was to me," and to help form his beliefs. During the boycott, he became a minister, of course, and during the boycott of buses in Montgomery, at the age of 26, he was elected as the leader of the Montgomery Improvement Association. And he had to give a speech to a couple thousand people, which is a big deal. And this is part of that speech is what he said. He said, "We're here because first and foremost, we are American citizens. The great glory of the American democracy is the right to protest for right." And he said, if we're wrong, well, then the Supreme Court is wrong. If we are wrong, then the Constitution of the United States is wrong. And if we're wrong, well, God Almighty is wrong. You know, I mean, he could say things in a way that no one else could say them. He had this mastery of language and poetry in the way he spoke. So today, we look back and we wonder, what would Martin Luther King do? How would he respond to current events? Because, you know, the truth is we sort of live in this little bubble here, do we not? And we all thought we had come so far in awakening and consciousness with, you know, the equal equality for marriage rights, the legalization of marijuana, which decriminalizes it. And now we see prejudices beginning to raise their heads again. A mosque in Bellevue was set on fire this week, and you know, they don't know who did it yet, but the circumstances are suspicious, and they have had vandalism in the last couple of months, something they said they haven't seen in about 5 years. And these are the things that we thought, particularly in the Northwest, that we were sort of done seeing, right? And yet here they are again. Churches, mosques, temples become targets for these kinds of things. And in 1991, I had only been here for a couple of months, and I had 2 little babies, and the phone used to be, the church phone used to be connected to our home phone. And I got a call at 2 o'clock in the morning, and it was the Seattle Police Department. Those of you who were around in 91 may remember this, but I got a call from the not the police department, the fire department. And they said, we're trying to contact somebody in connection with the Seattle Unity Church. And I said, yeah. And he said, well, it's on fire. You need to know it's on fire. And in 1991, for those of you who were here then, there was an arsonist who set 75 fires that year. He burned down churches and houses and all kinds of things. And so we were one of the targets. And The fire was started down in the fellowship hall, actually right below us, which is now the YOU room. He broke a window and put something, threw something through the window so that it would catch fire. And the fire had gotten to the point where, you know how fires jump, and it was ready to jump up into the sanctuary. And there was a homeless guy who, slept outside. And this is before cell phones, but he went and he called the fire department, and he actually saved the church. Because had he not called the fire department, the whole place would have gone up in flames. And, there's good in everything, a blessing. We got that whole room downstairs remodeled, paid for by the insurance company, because we didn't know what to do with that room, and now it's a beautiful YOU room, and I don't know, the chaplain office may have come out of that as well. So it's one of our principles, right, that there's good in everything, and we hold to that. So again, we thought we had come so far, and so my question in it is like, well, what happened? And now in Unity, one of our principles is something called denial and affirmation. And denial isn't denying what's going on in the world, but rather a denial is a releasing, it's a letting go, it's a healing. And in Unity, the way we pray is we first must deny, we must let go, we must release before we can affirm. So if you are praying for healing, you must first let go of the idea of sickness and ill health before you can affirm it. If you are affirming prosperity, you must let go of the idea of poverty and what it is that keeps you from experiencing abundance and generosity. Because the teachings say that if we go right to the affirmations and we forget about the releasing and we forget about the denial, then you may have a great manifestation for a while, but then it sort of falls apart, right? And in Unity, they would call this the asphalt of affirmation. In other words, you have a pothole, and it's like, all right, got to fix it. But instead of like really cleaning it out and filling it, you just sort of cover it up with pavement, with asphalt. And then what happens? It collapses, right? Because it's not really fixed. So it seems to me that what we're experiencing is an asphalt of affirmation. Like we had done our work and we thought we had, taken great strides in so many areas. And yet now we're seeing experiences that are showing that maybe that is not the case. So it gives us the opportunity to what? To clean out the pothole, right? To clear it up, to heal it once and for all, so that we may move forward. One of the things that Martin Luther King said is, only in the darkness can you see the stars. I think that's probably my favorite quote of his, because the stars are so beautiful, especially the darker it gets. And we kind of lose that here in Seattle because of the clouds. We don't get to see them very often. And when I was like in my early 20s, I went to the planetarium in Chicago, and I took astronomy classes, mainly so I could be in this incredible observatory, that not the observatory, but the room where they have the stars all lit on the ceiling. And of course, it was state-of-the-art. It was amazing. And I would go to these classes once a week, and the instructor would like spin the thing around so we would be in different parts of the earth, or move forward in time and backward in time. And I got to learn all the constellations and the stars and the planets by watching this. Was amazing, because of course I didn't see them with the city lights. And then when I went to Africa in '74, I got to camp on the Sahara Desert for like 2 or 3 weeks. I was only supposed to be there for 5 days, but we were with a group of people in a truck, and we had 13 flat tires in the Sahara Desert. So it took us about 2 weeks to actually get through it. And again, it turned out to be a blessing, because the stars were so magnificent. They were so beautiful. And I was able to, because I had learned them in class, I was able to pinpoint and see them. They're amazing, aren't they? I mean, are you not inspired when you see the stars at night, when it's so clear? And again, we never see the stars in the light of day. So even in our darkest times, the stars are you and me, right? And the stars shine even in our darkest times. So think about in your own personal life, when you've had really dark times, have you not been amazed at yourself? Like, where did I get the courage? Where did I get the strength? Where did I get the love to walk through this situation? So those seeing the stars in the darkness is something that we see in our personal lives, and it's also something we see when we're called to a higher place. So what are the steps that we can take in our lives? For those of us who were in a home group last fall, we read a book called The God and the Goddess, Gods and Goddesses, and it was about the Greek myth. And one of the Greek myths is about Ulysses, and he's on a boat with his crew trying to get home. And that's kind of the whole story of Ulysses trying to finally get home. And these sirens, these singers, start to sing. And what happens is the crew on the boats get so enamored with this singing that they lose track of where they're supposed to go, and they follow the sirens, and then the boats crash on the rocks or they jump in the water. And so Ulysses is a little bit concerned, of course, because the sirens are singing, and they're singing so beautiful that he wants to follow them. And in order not to follow them, he has himself tied to the mast of the ship, and his crew stuff wax in their ears so they don't have to hear the singing, because they know it's going to lead them to their deaths, really. But then Ulysses has a better idea, and he invites Orpheus to come to his boat, who is a beautiful singer. And Orpheus sings sweeter and better than the sirens. And so who would want to listen to these sirens when they can listen to Orpheus instead? So this leads us then to our point. Perhaps we need a sweeter song that we need to sing, right? That we need to listen to. That we need to approach not what am I against, what do I hate, but what do I love and what am I for? When Martin Luther King gave a speech for the Nobel Peace Prize, he spoke against the war, Vietnam War at the time, and he said, rather than have an arms race, what if we had a peace race? We're pretty competitive, right? So it's like, sure, give us something to do. But he said this: if we have the will and determination to mount such a peace offensive, we will unlock hitherto tightly sealed doors of hope and transform our imminent cosmic elegy into a psalm of creative fulfillment. All right, I'm going to say that again. If we have the will and determination to mount such a peace offensive, we will unlock hitherto tightly sealed doors of hope and transform our imminent cosmic elegy into a psalm of creative fulfillment. He used the word creative a lot. And what he meant by that was connecting to the Creator, connecting to the divine, connecting to God. And that our actions need to be, it's like last week when we were talking about intention, right? What is an intention in Arabic? It's connected to the heart, and it's an action from God. So it's almost saying the same thing. Martin Luther King didn't just talk about stuff, but he lived what he believed. In 1956, his home was bombed. Now, that's pretty serious. That's getting right where you live. And yet, from the front porch of his home, when an angry crowd showed up and they're ready to seek revenge, he said, "Don't get your weapons. I want you to love your enemies, and I want you to love them and to let them know that you love them." Those are profound words when something like that happens. And in Birmingham, when the church was bombed in the 60s and 4 young girls were killed, he spoke to the congregation that was also upset, and he said, "We must not become bitter. We must not lose faith in our white brothers, because somehow We must believe that the most misguided among them can learn to respect the dignity and worth of all human personality. So you'll notice that I haven't gone into the I have a dream speech because I think sometimes his other teachings get lost in just that one speech, as profound as it was. So in keeping with the legacy of Martin Luther King, in keeping with, how do we emulate him, then what is our call to do in these times? He said that love must be the forefront of our movement if it is to succeed, because love is the most durable power in the world, and only that power can save America from its most destructive source of division. He called it creative process, the creative protest designed with the divine in mind. So St. Mark's in December, I believe it was, or maybe in November, put forth a statement of beliefs, of something that they stand on. Jerry Schley had sent it to me. And I have been looking at it and reading it, and I realized that we too need a statement of purpose, a statement of belief, if you will. But it needs to be in our language, and it needs to align with our theology and our philosophy. So I have started that process, and you'll see on the front of your bulletin with just the first 3 points. And of course, I would love your feedback and input on this. But since our first principle in unity is there is one presence and one power in the universe, God the good, Omnipotence, then we are committed to seeing the good in all situations. This means that no matter what's happening, we call out the good. The church was set on fire. We got a great YOU room and a chaplain office out of the deal, and it was all paid for. Something good came out of this. So whatever your feelings are about what's happening in our country right now, it's supposed to be because it is, right? And we hold for the good outworking in every situation. Second is we behold the divine presence in every person. And this is the second unity principle. We behold the Christ in one another. And we will listen with open hearts to those with whom we disagree. And this is a big one because the country is becoming more and more divided. Perhaps you're divided with some of your family members. But listening and seeing the Christ in one another is part of our unity tradition. And we affirm diversity as a gift, as a blessing, and an opportunity for our nation. 3, we will lift up the truth. So we will strive to replace fear with facts when it comes to public discussions about immigrants, refugees, Muslims, racial diversity, and gender diversity. Can I get an amen on this? Amen. And it's a work in progress. It is to be continued. We will add to it. Now, Diane Robertson will be speaking next Sunday. It's going to be her debut. So please come and support her. And she's going to continue along in this theme. So I'm going to go to a Gene Houston event in Ashland, Oregon next weekend. So I'm going to miss the march. But anyway, and my daughter even said, Mom, I'll march with you. I'm like, really? That's a dream come true. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess there'll be more because I can't go with you. So there's an old Sufi story. And the student went to the teacher and said, I've heard that finding a spiritual treasure is something that one can only find alone. And if that's the case, then why are we here in community? And the Sufi master, Nasruddin, said, you're all here together because a forest is always stronger than a lone tree. The forest maintains the humidity in the air, it resists the hurricane, and it helps to make the soil fertile. But what makes a tree strong is its root. And the root of one plant cannot help to grow another. So working together towards the same end and allowing each one to grow in its own way, this is the path for those who wish to commune with God. So we're here together. We are stronger when we are in community. And finally, Martin Luther King said this about a new age. He said, we must go into the new age with the love that is understanding for all men with a forgiving attitude, to look deep down within every man and woman and see within her something of godliness. The end is the creation of a beloved community. So we pick up that pothole, we dig it up, that's what we're doing, and we are healing it and lifting it up so that we can see those stars in the darkness and shine in ways that we never could have done or imagined without the situations that we're in right now. God bless you.